My name is John Tytell. I've been a professor of English here. Started working here in 1963. That's 51 years ago. I'm an author. I've written 6 books and I have the 7th coming out next year. I'm known as a specialist in modern American literature, and particular specialty is the writing of a group known as the Beat Generation. Initially, when I was an undergraduate, I was going to be an attorney and change my priorities. I didn't major in English. I majored in history and philosophy. And only when I decided to go to graduate school, which was a coward's way out because they wanted to send me to Vietnam, where I knew I would be shot by my own, by a fellow American for shooting his mouth off. And I didn't want that fate. And one way to escape that fate was to stay in graduate school. If you stayed in graduate school until you were 26 then, you got an educational deferment. You were still eligible, but it meant they had to draft everyone younger than you first, which would be World War IV. So I knew that, if I pursued a PhD, that there'd be no way. There were other choices, other possibilities. I could have gone to Canada, but then maybe I could never come back. I could have declared myself as gay, but then my mother would be anxious about that. Or I could have had myself committed on a psychiatric basis, and my parents certainly would have been upset about that. And I also didn't feel that that was who I was, and I would have to be a total masquerade and act. And I didn't want to play that game either. So I stayed in graduate school and discovered that, I really liked writing and studying literature. And I suspect that a lot of my writing was a byproduct of the study of literature. When I came here, however, I didn't understand the protocol of the academy, or else I was too rebellious to accept it. And my hair went down to my waist, and my beard went halfway to my waist. So this was an immediate problem. And then the dean of the school read a poem of mine that appeared in a highly influential magazine called Partisan Review. The poem was about a rape. And he liked it, and he called me up and he said, John, you're a part-time adjunct. I can get you a job as a full-time lecturer. I didn't have a PhD yet. I'm still, trying to stay out of the Army. And this was going to make me twice as much money and for not much more work. And, I said, sure. The department had tremendous suspicion of me because of the way I looked and the nature of my appointment. And the only reason I was allowed to stay was that I wrote books like Naked Angels that came out in 5 countries with commercial presses, and no one in the academic world goes that route. They can't. They're not talented enough. If they get a book published, it's by some obscure university press, and there are 25 copies that their colleagues read. And they couldn't say no to me, no matter how obnoxiously I behaved. And I tried not to behave too obnoxiously, but I wasn't going to cut my hair. Now I've lost my hair, so there's nothing I can do about it. I can get an Elvis Presley wig or something, but I think you have to go with the flow. Let me tell you, at first, my colleagues regarded what I wanted to teach with great distaste. Because, I'd been hired here on the grounds that I did my dissertation on Henry James, and I was Leon Adele, his assistant, and that I was going to be a James specialist, which I turned out not to be. The reason that I didn't leave Queens, by the way, because I could have, especially after Naked Angels came out, is that I'm a New Yorker. And so is my wife. And we're both addicted to the city. And we don't want to leave. That's the reason we didn't leave. We've left because we've had the opportunity to live abroad, and we've taken that opportunity and gone away for a year or two and then come back. But we've never left our apartment. You know, our apartment, we have the same apartment for 40 years. So that's a sign. That's why Queens, because it's in New York City, you know? First of all, I would say finish your degree, no matter what it looks like. That's what I said to my wife. You know, I don't know how long we've been married. In the mid-1960s, when she had dropped out of one institution and wanted to drop out of a second. She's never used it, but I think it creates a quality of self-esteem and self-assurance that is meaningful from a psychic perspective for the rest of one's life, if for no other reason. I would say what Jack Kerouac said when he, in his novel The Dharma Bums, which is in part about mountain climbing as much as it is about Buddhism. When you get to the top of the mountain, keep climbing. I would say that as far as the learning process, which shouldn't end with a terminal degree, but should be a lifelong way of stimulating your psyche and helping it grow, because most of us feel that at a certain age it stops growing, and from a physiological perspective, indeed it does. You begin to lose 100,000 more brain cells a day after the age of 21 than you create, and that's the beginning of the decline. But but since you're only using at best 10% of your capacity up there, it doesn't really matter how many cells you're losing or how much LSD you take in the process. Well, it does. I mean, one should be very cautious about drugs. And I would say that to young people too. And I have been. I'm not going to say I didn't use them or that I wouldn't use them, but I would say that I was always very cautious and tried to do things in the right way and not to abuse that possibility, because that possibility is so prevalent in society now. It can lead to catastrophe if it's not used with intelligence. Like anything, like driving a car. You know, if you're going to text while driving a car, it could be a catastrophe.